Okay, now we have Enna, principal at Sakamoto Elementary in San Jose, California. Enna has over 20 years of experience in education. She is also a mentor to new principals and has served as on the ACSA Region 8 Executive Board as the Women's Network Leadership Chair. Just this year, she was also honored with the 2020 ACSA Region 8 Elementary of the Year Award. Graduating from UCLA with a BA in World Arts and Cultures and then from San Jose State with a Master's in Educational Leadership, Enna then worked her way up from a teacher in the Los Angeles Unified School District to various roles within Oak Grove School District. She is also the founder of theprincipalsupport.com, where she continues mentoring school leaders and creates thoughtful blog posts to support educators. To accompany our speakers, we have prepared a Google Drive file also that contains materials and slides so you can follow along, and I am putting that in the chat right now. Jenna has her own slides and also some of the materials on that Google Drive file, so go ahead and check that out. And here to give her talk now, which is called Staff Meetings That Sell, Creating Dynamic Presentations for School Staff and Colleagues. Please now give your full attention to Enna.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction, full introduction of my career, Xavier. I really appreciate it. I'd like to share my screen here. There we go. All right, so now you're looking at, there we go. All right, well, thank you so much for being here with me today. It's really nice to be part of this event. Today I'm going to be presenting on staff meetings. And what does this have to do with counselors or school counseling? This is really part of, staff meetings are part of school culture and organizational culture. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and how to create dynamic experiences for your staff that will permeate your school culture. So just a little bit about me outside of what Xavier mentioned. I am an elementary school principal. This is my 9th year as a principal in my district. And prior to that, I was a district administrator and a teacher. And I started teaching in LA Unified before I came to San Jose, and I've been with Oak Grove School District for 15 years. So in August, I started a blog that you can find at theprincipalsupport.com. It's mostly from my personal experience, and that's what I write from, and that's what I coach from as well. I coach school leaders, and mainly through an online course that just launched last month. It's called Principal SOS, and I'm actually considering changing the name to School Leader SOS because it's really for more than just principals. And there's 3 main topics covered: systems for productivity, organizational culture, and sustainability in the job, because we all know that school leadership is a tough job. But today the focus will be some of the content that I've created for our organizational culture module. And just a fun fact, so you know that I share a birthday with the late Rosa Parks. And I thought you should know that because our birthdays were yesterday. And that's why I have my balloons here. You can see in the background in my beautiful office. Don't hate, it is original cabinetry. And so I'm here at school. We do not have students on campus, so I feel pretty safe in committing to a daytime webinar without interruption. Otherwise, I don't know if I could do it from my campus, right? Okay, so also that's my Bitmoji for this month because Valentine's Day is coming up, and if you may know the reference. This is a reference from a famous 80s movie. So I just want to see who's here with us today. If you want to share with me in the chat, introduce yourself, what's your role, and you can list your birthday buddy or your favorite 80s movie. So go ahead and put that in the chat so we can see. All right, there we go. I'm in presentation mode. I've actually, yeah, so I'm not able to see much of the chat. Just kind of what floats up, but awesome. There we go. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. Okay, cool. So we've got an international audience. We've got lots of folks here. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. So we're going to move on. I just want to say that once again, I think that school culture really depends on the adult culture. We want students to walk into our campus or log in these days online to their classrooms and to school, and we want them to feel valued and we want them to feel cared for. And that culture of students feeling valued, cared for, and knowing that they can achieve and succeed and that the adults are alongside them really is part of a bigger school culture that depends on the culture of adults. And if you want to know what the culture of a school is, hold a staff meeting. If you want to know what the culture of a district is, hold a meeting with district folks. Because how people show up in that meeting is kind of how they're showing up for work. And there's nothing worse than planning an interactive, dynamic meeting only to have it fall flat. And you see the arms crossed and people aren't really engaged, or maybe, as school leaders, it's hard to have the kind of time to invest in creating these experiences for staff members week after week. And so, you might find yourself sometimes winging it and clunking through an agenda and it's just not going that well. So one of the things that in the course that I offer is in the Systems for Productivity module is I outline a whole system for arranging agendas and meeting notes and staff meeting or meeting slide decks that are just kind of like plug and play, and you don't have to spend a lot of time prepping for that. But here, this is all about the content of what those meetings are. And I just want to prevent that like start from scratch feeling each time. So when you're designing meetings for the folks that are in front of you, it just can't hinge on the content alone. So if you're like, your content is, whatever initiative your district or site or department is pushing forward, if that's what you're focusing on, then your meeting and your content probably won't land on everybody because everybody has a different learning style. So planning a meeting is really creating an experience for an audience. And that's what this first part is all about. It's all about your audience. It's all about creating your experience and also selling your idea. So S.E.L.L is an acronym, and that's what I'm going to get into in part 2. All right. So before we dive into the S.E.L.L components, it's just really important to understand the way you design the meeting is going to be received differently depending on who's in the room. And so we're going to look at some personality considerations of people in general, and that will include the people who are sitting in front of you. The personality considerations that I borrowed from a digital marketing expert named Tarzan K. So this is not my original idea, but what Tarzan does is she presents these different personality types and outlines them for how to market through writing, through copy. And so I've tweaked that concept for presenting ideas to adults in meetings. And I know we're not marketing when we're school leaders and we're selling ideas. We're not really actually selling them, but we are trying to captivate and hold the attention of the audience and hold the attention of the participants so that we can get them from point A to point B. We want folks to leave with new knowledge and we want them to be able to apply it. And so how do we do that when people have different, lengths of attention span and they have different learning styles? You may have a picture on the screen of a goldfish, and you may have heard that people now have a shorter attention span than a goldfish. And I heard that, I've heard that over years, but that our attention spans are that of a goldfish, and now they're even shorter, and now they're 4 seconds long. And the actual truth is that, and I learned this recently, that that's a myth. There's no scientific research that's based on that. That's just sort of a marketing myth. That people do actually have longer attention spans than goldfish. So thank goodness, right? Because as teachers and as administrators and people who are working with others, thank goodness we have a longer attention span in 4 seconds than goldfish, because we do need for folks to engage and participate and be with us in meetings and classrooms as well. That transfers over to classrooms. So it's all about, I mean, just like teaching, it's all about strategy when you're in front of people and leading a meeting and trying to meet objectives. So, these personality types are actually based on the DISC assessment, if you've heard of the DISC assessment, and there are free versions online that you can find to take the DISC assessment. I did, and I was pretty much blown away when I saw the report and found out that my personality on a piece of paper, they pretty much nailed it. They described me to a T. And I also love the DISC assessment because it doesn't pigeonhole you into just one type. There's just a dominant type. You can have streaks of the other types, but they're color coded, which is really nice because I kind of think that way. And so it helps me to just to understand myself, but also other people too. So as I learn more about myself and my own personality type, I start identifying it in other people. And when I'm presenting and talking to them, I can see, oh, there's just identifying like, oh, she's not being rude. She just wants to get the job done. Things like that. So if you don't know like the exact colors or the exact type of your audience, that's okay. You don't have to. But if you plan with strategy, your staff meeting that kind of meets all of the types, then you're going to be good to go. And also, you're not always going to have, an even balance of all of the types. Sometimes your meeting is going to be stronger in one or the other. So let's get to it. We're going to start talking first about each of these personality types I will break down. And they're based on, like I said, DISC. So DISC stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. All right, let's talk about our reds. So reds are decisive. They want it done yesterday. Think Daenerys Targaryen or Monica Geller or Rainbow Johnson. These are your people who want the gist. If you're sending an email, give them the TLDR version. If you don't know what that means, it stands for too long, didn't read. I hate getting like an email that's 17 paragraphs long and there's no bullets, there's no bold. It's just all information. It's like, what do you want me to do? Where's the gist? So I'm giving you a hint. I have a red streak for sure. They want the link. They want the handout. You're leading a meeting and it's like, oh, I'm not going to give the handout until it's time to look at it because I don't want people to read ahead. Or I'm not going to put the link until it's time to put the link in the chat because I don't want people looking. Give it to them. They want, it's good for them. It excites them. They're actually going to be listening to you and engaging with other things. And don't take it personally if they're moving on without you. Also, don't take it personally if they seem cold. They're fast processors. Reds are taskmasters. Give them clear objectives and clear directions, and they will get it done. People who might not be dominant in red or have, they just have a strong red streak will definitely show their red flag if your meeting is filled with too much information without time to just like get something done or without the gist. It's a lot of talking. So who are the reds in the audience now? Show me in the chat if you feel like, oh my gosh, Jenay just described me right now. Let's see it. Okay, if you are red or you have a red streak, you can let me know in the chat. We're going to move on to yellows. So this is our influence type. Yellows are the life of the party. You can, they want to have fun. They want to make the jokes. Think of Joey Tribbiani or Elaine from Seinfeld or Ruby Johnson from Blackish. Yellows need to be entertained. They want to um, they want to have fun. So you want to include gifs or memes from popular culture. You want to have emojis or just make your presentation a little bit more fun for them. If you make a mistake, turn it into a joke. We are having, people have technical difficulties these days. Oh, I see a lot of reds in my people right there. So yeah, technical difficulties, turn it into something funny. Your yellows will really resonate with you. A little sarcasm doesn't hurt. Some, pop culture or what's going on, right? So it's like Bernie memes right now, or in the last couple of weeks, that would have been a good thing to kind of pop into your staff meeting presentation. If your meeting is, or your presentation is super polished, then your yellows are going to kind of check out. It's very formal. Your yellows are like, they're looking around, they're fidgeting, they want to have fun. Yellows, however, are not the best at accountability. So they need a lot of reminders. They're not always on top of it. And it's not because they don't want to be, they need reminders. So before your staff meeting, right before it starts, you can send the agenda one more time and send the link or whatever it is. Don't forget, and they'll be there on time. And definitely, if you have a system in place where your staff meeting, if you have a drive where your staff meeting agendas always are and your slide decks always are and they always know where to go, then that's even better for yellows. So are you a yellow? Did I just describe you? You can put that in the chat so we can see who are our yellows in the room, who's the life of the party. And we're going to move on to the next color is greens. Greens are the steadiness types. These are folks who have big hearts and are emotionally driven. So you think Phoebe. Phoebe's kind of yellow too, but she's green. And Jon Snow, just really caring about other people. Greens seek harmony and connection. So they want to hear the stories, the anecdotes. Heartfelt YouTube videos to drive your point home. Those work really well for greens. Greens relate to authenticity. So as a presenter, if you're sharing something personal, the greens are really going to relate to you. In your meeting, use strong visuals and warm language for greens because greens will really start to come out of their shell a little bit and they want to take care of you and you want to take care of them. So do we have any greens with us today? If I just described you, greens, you might be missing like the story element in today's presentation. I just have a few little anecdotes I throw in there, but sorry, I didn't create this one intentionally for greens. All right, finally, so do we have green? Yes, I have a few greens out there, yay. I love stories too. Most people do. Most people have that in there, like a little bit of green streak in them. Yes, greens with some yellow and red. You're like, that's me, that's me. All right, blues are our conscientious types, very detail oriented. Lisa Simpson is a blue and Ross Geller and also Junior Johnson. They soak up what you have to say and they will find any gaps. So blues are very analytical and procedural. If you want a thought partner for your meeting or your presentation ahead of time, share it with a blue because they will help you improve it. They're going to find where the gaps are and help you figure out what needs to be in there. Blues are like the type who will read the frequently asked questions in their entirety. They want like everything, all the notes written up. They'll click on all the links, they'll read everything, and they want to know the research behind the material. So I'm not a blue. I have a little bit of blue in me. Like when I went down the rabbit hole. My blue streak is like when I go in the rabbit hole on the internet, right? I'm like, oh, goldfish, goldfish attention span, human attention span, and I go down this rabbit hole and I find the myth buster. And so that's my blue streak right there. But in meetings, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm more red. Let's get to it. Let's get to work. So, so blues, who's blue? Who are my nerds out there? Oh, I'm just kidding. I would never call you a nerd, but we do, the blue streaks are like, let's go down the rabbit hole. Let's find all the info. All right. Okay, so knowing how to play to the all of the 4 colors when you're creating a staff meeting will also help you to know what to expect during the meeting and help you present. You know, you won't be caught off guard if someone's like red or blue, whatever comes up. And also it's going to help you to plan something that kind of meets everybody's needs. So as we get better at creating staff meetings or presentations that resonate with people, that bring them together, you're kind of working the school culture from the inside out. So next we're going to learn about the S.E.L.L components. So, and guys, we will have time for Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions that you're putting into the chat, or you do have something, you know, that you want to follow up on, I'll stop at the end and I'll give you some time to ask questions. The S.E.L.L components, S.E.L.L stands for signs of connection, engagement and participation, laughter, and then learning and applying. So it kind of falls in line with those 4 personality types, but these are the components that you want to make sure are in your staff meeting agendas. And when you see these happening in the staff meeting, you know that you're being successful. So also, I just wanted to say that these are also guidelines for most staff meetings. You don't need to have them all balanced equally. You'll know when to lean on one more than the other. So it's kind of depending on the topic of your presentation. If you're, you know, diving into race and equity, you're going to want to hold back on the laughter a little bit. And, you know, you'll know intuitively just what needs to kind of take place depending on your content. So we'll just get started with signs of connection. We are wired to connect, period. We're not creatures of isolation and separation, and yet in schools we work in separate classrooms, separate offices. We are very much separated as adults. And the nature of our school cultures just really isolates colleagues. So if teachers and staff aren't having lunch together or breaks together, then the weekly staff meeting might be the only time that they're together. They're not, you know, they might be getting together with their department or grade level more often, but just as a school culture or as a district culture, if you're not bringing people together on a weekly basis, then they're pretty much isolated. When people can connect and find similarities with each other and really know each other, it fosters empathy and trust, which are very critical to your school culture. In an article that was published in, many of you may know, the Greater Good Science Center magazine, the article is called "Why Are We So Wired to Connect?" The findings of Matthew D. Lieberman, who's a UCLA, go Bruins, right, Michelle? UCLA neuroscience professor, are highlighted. So this is an image on the screen of his book, Social, Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. And this is an in-depth look. So I just wanted to pull out a little excerpt because it says that perhaps most importantly, we need to understand how vital our social connections are to our happiness and health. Lieberman points to research that shows having social connection is as important to health outcomes as not smoking. So I thought that was really key. And our experience of pain is lessened by the presence of those we love, and our sense of worth is connected to our social standing more than our monetary wealth. He cautions against working so hard or remaining so isolated that we eschew social ties. So this is just in terms of school culture, just so important that especially now, right, with the pandemic and all of the distance learning that's going on. I know that throughout the country and the world, school districts are handling it differently. In my district, we are remote. We are 100% remote. And so that it's even, and with staff too, All of our meetings are online, and you may be in the same boat. So that need to connect and building in time to connect is even more important now than ever. So what does this mean for your staff meeting? It means build in connection time. One way to do this is to give team building time and relationship building time in the beginning of the meeting, or you can filter it in throughout the meeting during like a brain break or something like that. And the other way to do it is by having people connect and process information together. So just allowing for like collaborative time and talk time during the meeting. Some easy moves to build in connection to your meeting and have your staff authentically connect would be to begin with like something that's low stakes activities, icebreakers, and then you can build from there and get kind of deeper and deeper. So one source that I love calls them mild, medium, and hot, and have little chilies next to them for levels of intimacy, I guess, and vulnerability. So you can, if you're in person, you can start your staff meeting in a circle, remotely or in person. Definitely start off with some kind of check-in. You can do like a mood thermometer, you can do an emotional check-in, or just have participants kind of share out around the room answers to icebreaker questions. You can do a line of communication, musical. You can just make it fun, right? Your yellows really like that. If you're doing like musical partners where they mingle and then the music stops, they have to find their nearest partner and then throw out a question for them to answer and respond to. You can pair up or group up by a chosen descriptor, like anyone with a, find a partner who has the same color shirt as you, or, the same, whatever, chosen descriptor, who's not in your grade level or who's not in your department. So they're mixing up. You can have them respond in the same way, post in the chat box, or use tools like Padlet or Jamboard, or Nearpod has a collaborative board where people are adding their ideas kind of to the same document. You could use a Google Doc too. Kind of clunky when there's a lot more, when there's a lot of people on there. So I like that Padlet, it's free. You can have people get into breakout rooms in Zoom or Google Meet. And other fun things to do would be like quick improv games. There's lots of resources on like little improv games you can do, or like focus games, just like brain break focus. And these are also great for, you can find, teachers use them, right? They're great for kids. Giving each other shout outs or giving compliments and opening up the floor to allow for time for people to share what they appreciate about each other is a really good idea as well. All right, so how are we doing on time? I think good, because we started a little early. So the other thing that you want to make sure you include and you want to look for is engagement and participation. So gosh, it's the worst when you're facilitating a meeting and you're like, oh, who would like to volunteer to X, Y, and Z, to the sound of crickets. So that is a good sign that your school culture needs some improvement, right? Nobody wants to be the one. So it's the worst. How do you know that your audience is engaged? They are, they're leaning in, they're ready to go, they're ready to ask questions, they're ready to volunteer, they want to get to work, they're participating. They're not afraid to ask questions. They don't, they're not, you can see, like sometimes I'm in a meeting and then people are like, it's like your phone's on the camera, put it down, right? So texting when you're with each other, kind of having a back channel communication going while you're trying to lead a meeting. Those are all signs that like the culture really, the meeting's either going south or the culture is needing some improvement, has some gaps. So what is going to engage your audience? All of those things that we talked about with the disc personalities, you're engaging different, personality types, but stories always engage people, even if you're not agreeing. So if you're in front of people a lot, if you're leading staff meetings or leading presentations, you want to start building your story vault. So these can be stories about like your own experiences. It can be stories about, from when you were a teacher, about kids, things kids say to you, the time you'll never forget. your own childhood and schooling. You kind of want to have a story vault for different scenarios that you can pull from. And sometimes it's hard to think of them in the moment, or like, oh, I need a story for this. And it will just help you to, your greens will be hooked, but everyone else just sort of like it creates a little container for the message that you're trying to send. Give your audience opportunities to participate meaningfully. So ask them questions and get them talking, or responding in the chat. Using those collaborative boards, you can play games like Kahoot or some kind of quiz, and that'll capture your yellows too. And switch it up. Don't use the same strategy every time. Use different strategies, and that'll keep them engaged. Kind of keeps them guessing, right? So you're like, oh, another Kahoot quiz. It's like the same thing every week. No, you want to switch it up. And another thing to switch up, and I'm just like realizing it right now because I'm a fast talker, is you want to switch up your speech cadence sometimes. So sometimes you want to be, you have to present a lot of material, and you want to say, guess what? And people will stop and go, what's she talking? Because they can tune you out when you're just like going over slides and we're talking about what the state requirements are, and it's really important information. It has to land, but you haven't paused, or you're not breaking it down. They're going to tune you out. So you have to change up your speech cadence a little bit sometimes. And that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Obviously I need to practice that too, because like I said, I'm a fast talker and I just want to, go. But it has to be done authentically too, right? So you just build in some like questions, or, be real when you're talking to your audience. Okay, so laughter is huge. You want to bring laughter and joy to your staff meeting because it does help to refocus the brain. It helps with engagement, all these things. So of course your yellows are going to love it, but everybody just loves a good laugh. And it decreases stress when people are laughing together and increases dopamine. It will also create a sense of connection if we are laughing about the same thing. Your brain can more readily process information if you have laughter and your stress is lowered. So I know it's important to, you're the one in front of the room. You want to maintain professionalism and authority over your topic. But feel free to just throw in a joke or two, or be ready to laugh at yourself, right? I do that all the time. If you're not funny, then use GIFs or memes or YouTube videos. You can rely on current TV shows, just what's happening in the news. TikTok has some great material, and people will be drawn to what you're saying, and it could be just like a fun interlude to just refocus folks. And kind of let their, people are, sitting in your meeting and they're not with you, can just kind of like soften and just lower the anxiety a little bit. It's definitely something that you don't want to overlook. So, so I just put a couple of ideas in there for you. Giphy.com is a great place to find GIFs, or you can just Google whatever topic you want to find something and just type meme next to it, and just tons of stuff comes up. And of course, YouTube has a lot of ideas there as well. So the last thing is obviously what you want folks to do, and the objective is something that they're learning or applying, or both. So when you begin the meeting, be sure that the staff has the end in mind and they know where they're going, and you've built in strategies to ensure that the new knowledge and the new skills can be practiced or processed and applied and later revisited. So how do you know that you're, or how will you have your audience process the knowledge, and how do you know that they're actually engaging with it? Just you're thinking of the different tools that you can use to give them so that they can apply knowledge, right? So will there be time for collaboration or sharing? What will they have, a note taker? Are they going to be I like to have people, if I want them to do something, I like to do it in the moment, right? I don't like people to walk away from a meeting with like a whole host of like list of things to do. I want them to be able to kind of like tackle it right then. So as much as you can do that is like helpful for them, even if it's just getting started on something so that, you know, and they don't finish it, it just gives them some time and it also shows that you're respecting their time. And it's really important that
Vince, we need you in the office, urgent. Vince to the office.
yes, I'm on campus. And that's our custodian. So I don't know what urgent is happening, but it definitely doesn't have to do with the student. So I don't have to go. But that's funny. So what you want to, so where was I? When you're planning your your calendar for the year of meeting topics, of course, things are going to come up that you don't anticipate. But if you're presenting like an idea or an initiative, I kind of think of the rule of three. So you want to have no more than three ideas or topics that you want to circle back to throughout the year. So it's like social emotional learning is going to be a topic that you come up with for your staff. So the rule of three is, so if you're doing social emotional learning, you know, social justice, and then like math strategies or something, like those would be like the three to focus on. It's not saying that you can't add anything else in, but you don't want to overload people with like, it's initiative overload. It's too much information, every meeting something different, and then circle back to a topic at least 3 times. So you're providing some continuity and some consistency of the learning topic. Thank you. You can hear me. I love it. Okay. So remember, you know, you have staff members who want to dive in right away with content or tasks or whatever you're presenting. They don't want to sit through like overly structured or like too many protocols. They kind of want to get started. So you have to honor that and mix it up a little bit. Protocols are important and they're a good way to, you know, introduce and process new knowledge or ensure that there's equity of voice. But for some folks, it's like too much, right? So you want to make sure that you have a balance. And then also, you know, your blues are going to want time with the content, or maybe they need like the research behind it. So you have links or you have just additional information, like where can you go to learn more? And that's going to be for your blues. Your agenda will favor, you know, one type over the other, just kind of depending on how you craft it, but definitely be sure to mix it up. And like I said, if you don't know your audience, you just kind of have to take a stab in the dark. But as you work with people consistently and you're building a culture around your school, your district, or your department, you are getting to know people a little bit better, and then you can start kind of finding out their personalities. Another thing you could do is you could have everybody take the assessment, and you could collect the data, and then you could kind of know. I haven't done that with my staff. We did an Enneagram assessment one time, and that was pretty fun. It was just kind of for fun, really, because they didn't do it online. They just kind of read about it and picked what was the one that resonated for them. So that's another way to do it. It's just kind of like you did here, like, oh, that's me, I'm a red. If you take the assessment, it gives you a little bit more information. So we're putting it all together now that we've covered how to reach different personality types and the 4 essential components that you need to include to make your meetings land with your audience. You're ready to put them together. So an important note is remember that when you're planning also your your content, you want to stay mission forward. So if it's not in alignment, you know, you're getting things from outside, people want like time at your staff meeting. If it's not aligned with your mission and your vision of your school or organization, then don't bring it to the staff meeting. Maybe there's like you can do a voluntary thing, or, you know, put it in a memo, but definitely protect that time together because you don't have that much time together. And it really is, like I said, it's helping to build and change your school culture for the better. And then give yourself time to reflect on your current school culture. You want to kind of take some time to think about where it is right now and where you want to go. And also, do evaluations at the end of your staff meeting. You can just be like 3 simple questions. Did you feel seen and heard? Were you able to meet the objectives? Just very like simple and concrete, and then ask for feedback. So you're getting a sense of how people are feeling and what's resonating for them and what you can do differently. You can start putting in, I mean, this is a lot, right, of information, and maybe you're already doing this intuitively, and that's great. And you can start putting in some elements or just kind of thinking about it a little bit differently. Try it and then iterate. Try it and then iterate. So try different things, and you'll figure out what's really going to work for your staff, because you want to create an experience that truly speaks to everyone and that sells. So if you, we're going to open it up for a Q&A, but I wanted to, if you downloaded the slides, there's a PDF with all the slides. You have this. Feel free to email me. It's Jenay@theprincipalsupport.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Hey Miss Kadu. That's when I was a teacher, that was my name, or on Twitter at Jenay Enna. If you want, there's a link there to join the course. So that's systems for productivity, like all the being productive and maximizing your time. Organizational culture and sustainability are all kind of encompassed on this course. You can read my blog. I just started in August, so I don't have a ton of posts on there yet, but every month coming out with something new. And that is www.theprincipalsupport.com. I have an email community that you can opt in on the website. And if you want to see and get a template of my to-do list, it's free. And you can, there's a link there for you as well. So lots of ways to kind of learn more and dive in. And I'll open it up for Q&A.
Awesome. Jenna, I was actually looking at the chat while you were talking, and there was one question so far from Yesenia. Go ahead and type any of your other questions right now while you can. But Yesenia asked that you were mentioning the 4 different colors of personalities, and is it possible to have one of each of these types or different characteristics or a mishmash?
Yes, it is. So if you're like, that's me, and it's kind of like, you might show up differently in different settings, right? So maybe at work, you're not as like, yellow, right? Because you're a professional and you want to, but at home with your family, you definitely are the life of the party and you want to goof around. So yes, you can have different aspects. You definitely will have a dominant trait.
We had another question. You mentioned how there's different signs of people when they show up, in different, like crossing your arms when you're showing up for a meeting and bad body language that way, or is there other signs of maybe like that are less obvious of this kind of like inefficiencies in your program or in your meetings, or are there also what other signs that you are doing well in your meetings?
Yeah, I mean, signs that your meeting is going well is just that people are, they're engaged, right? They're participating, they're willing, if you're building in connection time and then people are kind of like, who wants to go first? Or, they're not willing to jump in with each other. There's some trust, and empathy building that needs to occur.
Well, thank you, Jenna.